Neil Kettle, thanks for joining us. It's good to have you here.
Hi, thank you for inviting me.
Can we start a little bit about you telling us who you are and what you do, just at a high level, since we're going to dive deep into who you are in a little bit?
Well, I'm a vulnerability researcher and bug hunter, reverse engineer. I used to be an academic many years ago in theoretical computer science, but I left that behind, you might say. Um, Interests, cryptography, cryptography primarily, bug hunting, coding, do a lot of work with DNNs, that kind of thing, training and building the models, not LLMs,
Nice,
just DNNs in general, prediction models, that kind of thing.
nice. And what have you been using them for?
Um, well, two main reasons. One, voice biometrics, so calculating statistics on people's voices,
Yeah,
authentication, that kind of thing. Um, Personally, in my own time, prediction models. So I built a couple of models for CVE prediction. One I don't really want to talk about because it's too useful. Um, Sports betting, strangely, particularly football.
really
A couple of particular bets are, as it turns out, particularly amenable to DNNs. So
nice. So it's paying out,
yeah,
working pretty good.
for 2 years so far,
Nice.
20%
I wonder.
advantage over the bookie, so not too bad.
Nice. Have you thought about looking into using those with crypto or options trading? And
Oh, automated trade. Yeah, I did that many years ago, a couple of arbitrage strategies, but I stopped because, yeah, they got squeezed out very quickly. The moment the big trading houses came into the market, it was pretty much done.
it
Um,
works well
no more.
until it stops working, and then it's
Correct. Yeah. Those
nice.
guys will just squeeze you out almost instantly.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks for the intro. Let's get started, and we'll go through our 11 questions, actually 9 questions that we have. The first one is, when did you first start your interest in computers? Just computers in general.
I was introduced to them as a suggestion from a primary school teacher at the age of 7.
Nice.
So it's typical type of thing, kid at primary school, bit of a delinquent, never seems to be doing anything, but the teacher knows he's mathematical and logical. So they suggest, well, just give him a computer. And that's essentially what they did. So that was a
Do you
Commodore
remember what kind of
64.
computer that was back then?
It's, yeah, C64, one of the old
Nice.
beige bread bins. That became an Amiga 500 and then PCs very much later. We never had much money when I was a kid, so I was always at least one generation behind. But I've since realized that's actually a bit of an advantage, right?
Yeah. 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 You
Yeah,
have to work harder and
yeah,
learn more.
correct. The average coder today simply doesn't care about efficiency.
Yeah.
So that led into the interest in security because reverse engineering, reading code, the need to be efficient.
I was actually wondering about that today. Like people like you and I think we're around the same age. We had to work really, really hard to figure this stuff out. There was no
Well, there's no
books. There
internet.
was
Yeah, yeah,
right. There was
exactly.
almost nothing.
Yeah, I've still got the only thing I had with the C64 was an incomplete set of an old magazine which was distributed in the UK called Input.
Okay.
I've still got the originals, but now I've actually got a full set. Um,
Nice.
so yeah, that's all I had was that and the standard manual that you get with a
Yeah.
C64. Same thing with
Yeah.
the
We have a
Amiga.
similar story. When I was a kid, we didn't have much money. That I didn't have any computers. The neighbors had the Commodore 64 and things like that. And everybody wanted to play the Ninja games, but I just wanted to type and code figure out basic and
Yeah,
all that.
yeah.
Very cool.
I Yeah, back then I was very into logic and mathematics, even at a very young age. So the biggest interest for me was the idea that given given the algorithm, you could solve any problem.
Yep.
Of course,
Yep.
back then I was completely not trained mathematically, so I had no idea about you know Turing or Gödel, incompleteness. I simply believed that the machine could be made to solve any problem, which is exactly what Hilbert thought in 1900, since proven incorrectly in the
Nice.
negative. But that's was my main interest.
Cool. Very cool. Let's move on to the next question. Is similar but cybersecurity. So when did you get your first interest in cybersecurity?
Yeah, I wish I hadn't because of the trouble it caused me and has to this day. But that would be 1999 when I was a first year undergraduate student in computer science. Quite strange that it happened that way. I was a cracker prior to that, so reverse engineer, and sat on IRC as everybody was in those days. And
Yeah.
standard story guy comes to me and says, "Hey, here, look at this piece of code. Can you figure out what it does?" And it was an exploit for, I believe, IIS at the time. I think it was
Okay.
NT4 back then. IIS 4 or something, or 6 or something like that. And he was complaining that it would work on some machines but not others. Um, and he says, "Oh, can you take a look at this?" So I did. Very quickly realised how it worked, and the skills from reverse engineering and cracking, modifying programs, were virtually the same. But I'd never thought to employ them in this way.
Yep.
So this exploit was the impetus, and I realised the impact immediately. Right? I'm not modifying programs anymore and disputing the binaries. I'm modifying the semantics of the program on somebody else's computer. And like a light bulb went off, and immediately you get an adrenaline rush,
Yeah.
and then you do things you're not meant to do. Uh, yeah, and that's how I got into it.
Nice. Very cool. I was wondering, you mentioned IRC. I spent a lot of time on IRC as well back then. Network were you on?
FNet.
Undernet, FNet? Okay. FNet and Lin people. I spent a lot of time on Undernet, a little bit on FNet, and a lot of time on Lin people. We might have actually
You
crossed
probably
paths
did,
back then without
yes.
knowing.
Yeah, I used a different handle back then. I had to disassociate for some reasons, shall we
For
say?
whatever reason
Yeah.
that we won't talk about. All right, awesome. So the next question I have is what you feel is the coolest hack you've pulled off so far in your career?
Well, I gave this some thought, and I can't really decide which one. I mean, there's about five different, so I'll skim over them. I think the first one
Sure.
is
Yeah.
the best. So back in 1999, I mean, I was 18 years old, and in the UK, you had to take student loans and all that kind of thing. So that you know, even back then, I was a free marketeer, so I despised loans. Paid them off as quickly as possible. So back in 1999, there was a company called who came up with an absolutely awful idea. It was an obvious pyramid scheme, a complete scam. You can look it up. It goes by the name of All Advantage, and it
Okay.
was the standard pyramid scheme. So sign people up, watch adverts before adverts even existed on Google. I mean, yeah, it, they
Wow.
were groundbreaking in that respect. But I immediately saw the the opportunity here, turn the pyramid scheme upside down, take their client and re-implement it. So emulate it. So I scripted it all up, generated several 100,000 accounts, and then when I would go home at the weekend, emulate the protocol and have it all feed up to me. Um, that was pretty good. It paid off the loan. Um, entirely. University was free at that point. Um, the downside was I just couldn't resist trolling. So when I was signing people up, of course, I signed up all my family members and I ran out of family members. So who else do I sign up? People that I know are in a given location. Well, the US government gives out addresses to people in federal maximum security prisons for pen pals. So
Oh, yeah.
I started signing up Ted Kaczynski, people like that. So I have this idealized view that at some point Ted Kaczynski got a check from All Advantage, and that was me. So yeah, yeah. Apart from that, I'd have to say it'd be the Mac OS X root pipe vulnerability, which became public, I believe, in 2015. It's one of those named vulnerabilities. I never understood why people name vulnerabilities. It always seemed cringe, but people do. Yeah, it became public in 2015, but the original bug I found in June 2010, I believe. I was a
Okay.
contractor at the time for somebody that you could look up, but I'm not going to say who it was. You know, like government malware, if you will. And I found it with a rather simple requirement. They wanted to be able to keylog on Mac OS X, but not inform the user that they were keylogging. So how do you do this? And the way you did it was you had to turn on universal devices or universal assistive devices or something like that. And the job was simple: reverse engineer how Apple do it and re-implement it. So the user doesn't have to click the button. So I did that. They gave me 2 weeks for it, and it took 20 minutes.
Well,
Yeah, absolute classic. Reverse engineer it, and 20 minutes later, you look up at your friend who's sat on the table opposite you, and you know you've got a funny look on your face, and he says, "What's up with you?" I says, "Mac OS X is backdoored.
wow.
You can write any file to any location owned by root with any permissions."
Wow.
So not only had we figured out how to turn the keylogger on, we figured out how to install the malware at the same
Wow.
time.
Without permission.
Yeah, and that was 2010, so it stayed 0 day for 5 years. I
Oh,
did
wow.
use it. I did use it on stage once. The Trustee Rapport 44con presentation. If you watch it, no one ever noticed. I mean, this is whenever I do a conference or something, I always hide something in it as a troll for people that really pay attention.
That does
But
not
no one ever
surprise
know.
me by you,
Yeah,
Neil.
but no one ever noticed this. And if you listen to the 44con presentation, at one point I say something along the lines of, I'm paraphrasing, and now I'll use a backdoor in OS X to make this owned by root. And no one took notice. But yeah, but that's the vulnerability I was using, root
You
pipe.
actually did. Wow. That's cool. Is there a CVE associated with this one?
Yeah,
You know,
certainly should be.
I would like to read more about it.
Of course, it's not even on the Wikipedia page for it. CV 2015-1130.
2015 1130. Very cool.
Yeah,
Awesome.
the other bugs I'll skip over were NetIQ endpoint, which an exploit which was particularly cute for several reasons. That stayed 0 day for 16 years, so
Wow.
I kept that one. The DNE Deterministic Network Enhancer 2000, which was a Windows kernel bug, which hit all Cisco VPNs. That was interesting because of a run-in with a guy that worked at an insurance company when I was actually on site doing a job. He was running around trying to fix it, and he was complaining about some. He actually said some asshole has dropped a bug with no patch, And, I'm standing next to him and I look over his shoulder and he shows me the exploit. And I say, oh, that guy. And he says, oh, why, do you know him? I said, yeah, he's me. Um, which was interesting. It led to an
I
interesting
bet.
conversation, yeah, about the morality of vulnerability research, etc. Yeah, the other one was the FreeBSD K-timer kernel exploit, which earned me a rather ignominious mention in a hacker e-zine by a group by the name of Zero for Owned, who in 2009 owned Dan Kaminsky. At the end of the e-zine, they expressed their hatred for me and told me to quit security. The funny thing is, if you look back through the e-zine, you realise that Dan Kaminsky was running FreeBSD 7 on his mail server. So you might ask, are you biting the hand that fed you? Where did you get that exploit from? Right. So yeah, they're telling me to quit security while potentially simultaneously using the exploit that I may or may not have provided. So yeah, those would be the biggest.
Super interesting. Wow. Um, very cool. Thanks for sharing that. Next question is not necessarily pen testing, but what kind of testing is your favorite and why?
Um, reverse engineering and crypto related stuff. Uh, I tend I tend to like problems that I liked as an academic. Ones where there is no pressure to succeed. One of the problems with
Okay.
pen testing, yeah, the pen tester's dilemma. You find a lot of issues, client is complains there's a lot of issues, and you get blowback. You don't find issues, he wants to know why you didn't find issues, and you're invited to prove a negative, which is
And
why I always say,
ultimately, they also wanted no issues, but also
correct.
questioning why there's no
While
issues.
simultaneously, yeah, which is why I've always said that pen testing is a fool's errand. Right? It's a born to lose proposition. You're damned if you do and damned if you don't. So I
Yeah.
always preferred those type of problems where you're not under any pressure to succeed. Crypto, you're not meant to be able to break it. Reverse engineering, you find something fine, like the root pipe book. If you don't, well, we just implement it another way and that's
And
it.
maybe you learned along the way as well.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. Also, I agree on, pen tests feels like, I mean, they're very important, obviously, right? We still need to do pen tests and make it identify issues, it removes issues and things like that. But I've always found that I could spend so much more time, especially most applications. You can spend so much more time on them than you do in a typical pen test. And like enterprise application, you could spend months on them and
Yeah.
just always still finding things and digging deeper. So I can see why you like that. Get to really, really know the target inside out.
Correct. Yeah.
Awesome. Let me go ahead and ask you the next question. Uh, what is something you think everyone can do to get better results when it comes to security testing? Like people are maybe not doing enough, and
Well, you see, I always go back to first principles when I think like this. I put my academic hat on, and it's one thing that I would say is first principle: remove bureaucracy.
okay.
People always the tendency today is the inexorable march of the bureaucrat, and bureaucracy is an art, and people forget that it's an art. It's the art of making the possible impossible, and people forget the fact that it's a human being that's going to be doing the testing, and human beings haven't changed for 100,000 years. They, they operate the same way as they always did. And one thing that Apple realized is friction in user interfaces between the person and what they're trying to do is a very real problem, and you should
Mm-hmm.
reduce it as much as humanly possible. And that's where the
Yep.
bureaucrat comes in when it comes to security testing. You know, every pen tester's done it. you're going on a job and it's a firewall config review, and the client says, we can't give you the config. Oh, okay. So what can you give me? Well, I can give you a screen share on a Teams call, but you can't control the mouse. You have to give
Yeah,
you have to speak to the guy, and he's going to move. How big's the file? 10,000 lines. Oh, right, okay, right, yeah, right. And
they're gonna spend 2 weeks scrolling.
it's always the same, yes. And you know, salespeople and managers at pen test outfits, they'll they understand fundamentally the bureaucratic imposition, but they won't fight against it because it's in their interests to always comply. The old adage, the customer is always right. Well, if you actually want to deliver these jobs, you remove as many of the hurdles as humanly possible.
Yeah,
Um, but they just seem, since 2007 till now, the number of hurdles has just been it's up every year, every single year. It just keeps on going up.
yeah. We can definitely do a lot better as an industry to better educate folks as to, what makes the most sense, what will get them the best results. Because, like you said, co-piloting a firewall review or config review like that is not an efficient way to do things. It's burning time that could be spent doing better things.
Correct,
So
correct.
absolutely.
The amount of,
I,
yeah, the hoops just keep getting bigger.
Yep. And it's similar. Sometimes folks they'll say we just want a black box pen test. We don't want to provide any information whatsoever because you have to prove yourself and things like that. I think it's important to educate people as to there's different types of pen tests. The reason we ask for that is to provide more value within a certain amount of time. We definitely don't do enough of that. I agree. The explaining and setting out people for success, basically, as opposed to just saying yes. We say yes too much. Awesome.
Correct. Yeah.
Um, what is the biggest misconception people have about penetration testing and security testing?
Probably say some of the clients that I would speak to tend to believe that security testing is 100% technical. It isn't really, essentially. I mean, Pareto principle, it's, I'd say it's 20% technical and 80% bureaucratic. A friend of mine once went for an interview at a pen test security consultancy just recently and was surprised to hear during the interview that the interviewer basically said that pen testing is glorified data entry, and that was an interview at a pen
That's a
test
far
company.
stretch.
Well, yeah, yeah, but if if a manager at a security consultancy is willing to say that, that shows how far the needle has gone with regard to the balance. It's not 100% technical. It hasn't been for a very long time. Those type of jobs tend to go to contractors, not not security houses, pen test houses. They would go direct to somebody that they know and can trust, or they would hire them, right? So guys from back in the day in the late 90s, like LSD, Last Stages of Delirium, were a Polish group of students.
Okay.
I still believe they all work at Microsoft.
Oh, okay.
They get hired, they don't end up in security testing outfits.
Interesting. Very cool. Um, yeah, I agree that initially when people start in this field, they're 100% focused on the technical aspect, but over time you learn, like you
Yeah,
said, the politics, but time management is a huge thing because initially you can get like stuck in the first thing you find and you just spend a ton of time on it. When if you took a broader view up front, you might have found a better lead to dive
correct.
into and whatnot. So absolutely, I agree. There's a lot that can be done to improve um, that's non-technical. Um, What is a vulnerability or attack vector that you think is underestimated right now? People are not really looking enough for that, not taking advantage enough of that.
I, I'm not so. I'm not sure if if it qualifies as a vector, but I'd probably say it's something that's masked by something that isn't actually related to security itself, like free market economics masks it, and that's the idea that the old techniques of remote root, remote system exploits have gone away. People suffer from a logical fallacy that just because we haven't seen any of these exploits implies they don't exist anymore.
Right.
But it's not the fact that they don't exist, it's they do exist. It's the market economy that is hiding them from you. You don't see them anymore.
And
And
how's
that's
the
becoming,
market economy hiding it?
well, it's the tyranny of the highest bidder. The pen test outfits won't pay $100,000 for a remote route. They won't pay $1 million for it. They can't.
Right.
Governments can. So those exploits and that type of information goes into a very deep dark hole, and
Mm.
you will never see them until somebody comes along and finds it again. And then the only hope for the industry is that the person that finds them doesn't have the contacts to try and sell it again,
Right. Right.
right? To keep it private.
Yep.
Um, but as the tendency to centralize over time, the number of people that do this kind of work is getting smaller. Um, you average in 2007 when I joined pen testing, I was shocked that out of a group of 30 pen testers, only about three could read assembler, only about five could read C. Today, that group of 30,
Probably even
well,
smaller.
less than one would
Wow.
read C. Less than less than one would understand assembler. So the skills are centralizing. So the number of people that can do it is getting smaller, and therefore the probability that that person has contacts to sell the exploit should they re-find it is higher. So these exploits just never see the light of day. They
Yes.
disappear. Um, and yeah, everyone has the same fallacy. We don't see these things, so therefore they don't exist.
They're the most
Uh,
dangerous ones, though, because
correct.
nobody
Yeah,
has the patches.
exactly. And they're just as numerous as they were before. You
Wow.
just don't know it.
And yeah, and I'm noticing too a lot, as we bring new technology like IoT, for example, we're bringing
Mm-hmm.
back all the old class of vulnerabilities into new technologies. So there's
Well,
another area where,
straight up back doors. I mean, myself and a guy called John Anderson wrote an exploit several years ago for it was DBL Tech or something like that. It's a Chinese brand of voice over IP and SMS gateway, which straight up had a backdoor in the telnet interface. It was well hidden using MD5. You had to challenge response, but
okay,
you could re-implement, and that's still there. It's still there, just in a different form. See, when we reported it to the Chinese vendor, they identified the vulnerability. The vulnerability is that their backdoor wasn't hidden well.
hide your backdoor better.
So they just kept improving the backdoor and making it harder. So the current
But when
version
you
of the
reverse
backdoor,
engineer it,
yeah. So the previous version of the backdoor was a challenge response where all of the challenge was known in the telnet banner, and you could
in the
compute
banner.
the response and give it back. Um, the backdoor still exists today, but includes a piece of information that you don't know remotely, which is derived from some IO-octal to the NAND, which I believe is some part of the serial number of the NAND or something like that.
Okay,
So they mix the serial number of the NAND into the backdoor, the challenge response, which you don't know,
okay.
but you can brute force it. And there are about
How big
200,000
be?
combinations last time I looked.
That's
Um,
it.
so yeah, so you could brute force it, but I've never bothered to write the exploit for it. If anybody wants to look, it's still there. Um,
Nice.
yeah,
It sounds like it probably brute force pretty quick. Not many digits, you said, huh?
yeah. But last time I calculated, it was about 200,000. But
Okay, that's not too
uh,
bad. All right. Two more questions for closing. The first one is if somebody wants to break into cybersecurity today, what's the advice you'd give them?
uh, yeah, this advice is quite contentious. I've tried giving this advice to several people, and it depends. It splits people 50-50. Um, some people like it. Tends to be pen test outfits and managers thereof that hate it, but I'll say it anyway. Uh, People today have a predilection to memorize the antecedent. They don't learn the premise. People often ask me, how did you get into exploit coding? Well, exploit coding was easy for me because it naturally followed from cracking,
Right.
right?
Yep.
Learning assembler and how the machine works, it naturally followed. I didn't need any help. I didn't need anybody to write a zine article to teach me how to do this. It just followed as a corollary. So I didn't
What tools did you
memorize.
use back then?
Oh, it's just
Early when
GDB, just a Linux machine with GDB.
okay.
Yeah, for Linux, Windows, WinDBG attached to
Yeah.
pros. Yeah, and make it, the usual, make it crash and see what you can do, that kind of thing. It
Back then
just follows on. It follows on from the
everybody knew
cracking
you could
because
find
if you're a cracker, you're staring at a debugger all day. It's just using it to a different end. So don't learn the antecedent, learn the premise. So if you want to go into education, if you want to go to university, don't bother with a cybersecurity degree. They'll teach you that CBC mode for symmetric block ciphers is bad,
right.
right? But then you'll never learn the why. But if you learn computer science and theoretical computer science as a science, all else will follow
Yeah.
as a corollary,
Yeah.
right?
I think it'd
You'll
be a
learn.
lot
So,
easier to learn on your own
yes, you'll
later.
learn. Correct. You'll learn. Go as low down to the core science as your intellect will permit you, and then start from there. Applied back in my academic days, we used to call things like cybersecurity degrees as like an applied science. Right? It's you know,
It's not the science,
memory.
it's the output of the science.
Yes, it's the antecedent, not the premise. Always look, yeah. And people have a tendency to do that. They think it's a shortcut. It isn't, because you end up thinking inside a box, and you're in the
Right.
box, but you don't even. And worse still, you don't even know you're in the box because you've
Right.
never seen anything outside it.
Yeah. It reminds me sometimes somebody can like find a SQL injection, but they have no concept
Correct.
of how to write
Yeah,
SQL statements and
that is exactly what I saw in the early 2000s when people started pumping out zine articles to exploit stack buffer overflows. People would just pen test it. I can give a perfect example of it. My first job in pen testing after I came out of academia, there was a guy who sat opposite me on the first day, and the first day he says, "I hear you've got some experience with exploit coding," because when I went for interview, I told them I'd done a bit, but never told them exactly
yeah.
what. The reason being is the first interview I took, I told them everything. And the reply I got was to the recruiter was, we can't hire him because he must be a black hat on account of the fact that he's written all this stuff. So therefore he must be bad. So I learned from that, don't tell them everything. And on the first day, this guy says, "Oh, I've got this bug, stack buffer overflow in this open source program. Can you take a look at it? I've been trying to exploit it for 6 months, and he's been following these steps. and he couldn't crack it. And it basically took 20 minutes just to get the offsets correct. But because it wasn't written down in steps, the antecedent, he couldn't fathom the principle.
Hmm.
Learn the premise, the core, and then everything else will follow.
Build
And
on top of a
practice,
foundation.
practice, practice, practice. Open source code, read it until your eyes bleed and you can understand C perfectly, and then disassemble it to the point where you can read the assembler. And when you're reading the assembler, there's a common phrase that says, you know, you're fluent in another language that isn't your mother tongue when you catch yourself thinking in that
Yep.
language.
Yep.
Yep. Same thing with this. If read assembler until you catch yourself working out the C inside your head. And when you get to that point, you're good enough.
Then you're fluent.
Correct. And then you can apply that to everything else.
Nice.
As someone said, all code is open source. You just have to read the assembler.
Yep. Very cool. Um, awesome. So last question is, where can people find out more about you, follow you, and learn more about your work?
Uh, I've got a couple of very cringy videos on YouTube, which were filmed at conferences. I always hate giving conference speeches for several reasons. One, I never quite did understand why people would ever listen to me. Um,
Because you got
but
interesting stuff to say, Neil.
I have an absolutely awful voice. I sound like a monotone record from the 1980s playing. Speak logically. I've got nothing interesting to say. I never understand why people listen to me. So you can watch those on YouTube. The other place is digit-labs.org, which is an old website from back in 1998,
And
which
it's been
used
up
we used.
since?
Sorry.
It's been up and operating since 98?
Yeah. Yes, it used to be a group back in the
Nice.
day. There were 4 or 5 of us back then.
What was the
I
name of
don't
the
know
group?
what. Digit Labs.
Yeah. Oh, okay, yeah. Digit Lab
Yeah,
still. Okay.
yeah. So yeah, it was bug hunting, exploit coding, and distribution of thereof. Um, but at some point, I guess I took ownership of the domain and kept it going. Can't quite remember when that was, but it must have been years and years ago at this point. So yeah, I update it every now and again when I put out an exploit, but I tend to keep hold of them these days. I don't. Yeah,
It just makes sense for what you're doing, I guess.
yes, market forces. People don't like to say it, but market forces will always succeed.
Yep. That's what dictates what happens in the world, I guess.
Correct. Yep.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much, Neil, for joining us today. It was really good to get to know you. It was good to see you again as well. It's been a long time, and we'll keep in touch, and maybe we can talk again later in the future.
Okay. Excellent.
All right. Thanks, Neil,
Right.
and take care. And talk
Take
later.
care.
Bye bye.
Bye.